Hello and welcome back to the podcast. This is episode 78, and what I'd love to do is use this episode to explore a few of the common mistakes that I see wellness experts and health practitioners making when it comes to discovery calls and having conversations that convert leads or prospects into paying clients. And the importance of understanding some of these common mistakes so that ultimately you can avoid them. And these are probably, like I say, the most common or frequent challenges that I hear my clients facing when they get on to a call to, speak to a potential prospect, and you might call it a discovery call, you might call it a complimentary call or a consultation. Some of the common things that are coming up that in this episode I'm going to help you to either avoid or to be able to work through a little bit more seamlessly. So let's go ahead and dive in to the first one. So the first common mistake that I see being made is this awkwardness that happens when it comes to talking about the price. Now, if you are somebody who is having sales conversations for the first time, you've not done sales or selling in previous jobs or in previous capacities, then the money part can be potentially the most challenging part about the conversation. And yet it is so important because ultimately you're selling a service, and ultimately your prospect or your lead really wants to understand what the investment is, what the cost of the investment is, what the your prices are when it comes to working with you. It's an important aspect. We talk about the features of the program or your work together. We talk about the benefits of it and the transformation. And then, most importantly, we're talking about the logistics, the how much does it cost, what are the next steps, and so on. So what I'd love to do is give you a little bit of a structure or a process to follow so that when it comes to talking about your price, it feels easy, it feels seamless, and there's not that typical awkward pause that can sometimes follow mentioning of price. So if we can avoid that awkwardness, that awkward pause, that kind of cliffhanger silence that can sometimes follow the price, then you will feel more comfortable. Your prospect will feel more comfortable, and it will be easier for you to get to a conversation about whether this is the right next step for this prospect. So what typically happens is you have a fantastic conversation. There's evidence that there's support needed, and I have a whole other podcast episode on having a structure for a discovery call and how important it is to have an agenda to follow, not a rigid, copy, paste, cookie cutter script, but an agenda that you set so that you can control the pace of the conversation, have boundaries around your time, and also reduce the risk of it actually, turning into a free coaching session, as it were, where you're using the session to solve that person's problems. So you start off and you have a wonderful conversation about this particular person's challenges. You get to the part where you talk about where they'd like to be in the future and the transformation that they'd like to experience. You might cover, and I suggest that you cover, what they've already tried that hasn't worked. And it's really powerful to dive into, what's broken? What have you done that hasn't worked? What approaches have you taken that haven't helped you to get to the outcome? And once all that is covered off, we know where they are, we know where they want to be. We've stretched that out a little bit by focusing on the gap that exists. And you've asked that individual whether they'd be interested in learning more from you about how you could work with them and support them. And they say yes. Then you're at the point where you're going to cover off logistics. And the logistics are, right, so, the way in which I work with clients is this. And it's really important here that you cover off, how the relationship is going to get started, how it's all going to work, and then ultimately the investment. So the way that I like to talk about investment in my coaching, and the way that you can also do this, is firstly to refer to it as an investment. And so instead of saying the cost to work with me or this is how much it costs, it's nice to frame it as an investment because that's exactly what it is. It is money that is being spent on something that will provide a return. So an investment is a really nice way of framing it. So starting with something like, let's talk about the investment or let's talk about the nuts and bolts of working together is a nice way to frame it. And then ultimately, and this is how I, teach our clients inside Consistent Clients and our higher level program, Elite Experts, talk about their price and to frame their price, is to give their clients two options. And those two options will typically be to pay in full or to pay in installments. So you're going to frame those two price points for your prospect. You're going to let them know that in terms of the investment, there are two options for you today. The first is that you can pay in full, and the amount to pay in full is X. And then if you'd like to, and plenty of clients go for this option, if you'd like to, you can also spread your payments out across X number of months. And the payment plan option is X number of payments of X amount of money. Okay. Now, what typically happens in most discovery calls is that there's an awkward pause after that because you've shared the price and you're looking for a response. What this doesn't account for is a couple of things. Firstly, two things can happen. The first thing is it can leave you feeling this awkward silence is happening and you're panicking and you're worrying that they're overthinking the price or that it's too much, or your brain goes into overdrive of what is this person thinking. And the second thing that's happening is the exact same thing for your lead or prospect. Their brain is going into a little bit of overdrive because you've just presented them with some costs. And it may be that, and it typically will be that the cost is perfectly fine, or it might have come as a surprise to them. Either way, it doesn't matter, but everybody needs time to process a price. So if there's an awkward silence afterwards, one of two things are going to happen. One, you're going to attempt to fill that silence with kind of meaningless chatter or a sort of anxious, quick, I need to fill this space. Or your lead or prospect is going to do the same thing. So what's important is when someone is being told about an investment that they are about to potentially make, they need a little bit of time to digest it. And so that enables your prospect to take into account any other things that they might be investing in, to consider whether it is something they can afford right now, to consider the transformation as a whole. And that's what we want to bring them back to. So here's the first strategy for you to avoid that common mistake of an awkward pause following the price where you're looking for a response from the prospect that they're not ready to give. The way to avoid it is to continue with what would be the next steps. So here's how I would deliver something to this effect. So the way that we work together is that there are X number of sessions over X number of months and all of these other things that are included. And the investment is either one payment of £1,000 or $1,000, or you can spread those payments across 3 months, and that would be £350 over 3 months. Now, once you have made that payment, these are going to be the next steps that will happen. I will have my assistant or I will reach out to you to schedule our first session together. I'm going to send you a couple of forms that I'd like you to fill out so that I can learn a little bit more about you and your situation and get into more of the detail beyond what we've talked about today. And then we will start our process together. Now, starting that process together starts with those onboarding forms. I will send you a few other pieces on email to help you to navigate the process that we're going to go through together. And then, like I said, we're going to schedule our first session together. So I would need you to make that first payment or payment in full, whichever works best for you. And then we will start the process together. Now, so what's really important about what you have framed after the cost is that you've given them what the next steps might look like. You've also given them that space that we talked about to start to process the cost. And instead of asking the question, is that something that you can pay for right now? What we're going to do after we've shared those next steps is we're going to ask a really important question. And the best way to frame it, and you might want to write this down and put it into your own language and use it on your next discovery call, is this. Given everything that I've shared with you about how we work together, what that looks like, and what those next steps could be for you, does this feel like it's something that would be beneficial for you right now? See how different leaving a pause on that question for your prospect to answer, given that they have heard the price, they've heard what the next steps are, and then you've asked this question where you've wrapped everything up, And you've asked them, not only is the price okay and the next steps okay, you've actually framed the question so that it's given everything we've talked about on our call today and the way that it works and what the next steps might look like. Does this sound like it could be something that would be beneficial for you right now? And the answer to that question is almost always going to be yes, because if you've had a good conversation, if you know that you can help them, if you presented your solution in a really confident way, then the answer to that question is yes. It doesn't mean that it's not going to be followed by, but I just need to process the cost, or I just need to double check with my partner, which we'll come on to in a moment, or I'd like to just sit with it, or is there anything else you can send to me, or I'm wondering about this, that, or the other. This is going to be an opportunity for you to answer any other questions that they have. But the first question that you ask is that holistic, well-rounded question that comes back to the whole offer that you've talked about on the call, on that occasion. So there's a very big difference between saying the price, there being an awkward pause where nobody has time to process it, and moving forward after you've mentioned the price onto next steps and then to that final question that we've just framed together. Have a go of using that little strategy on your next discovery call and see how much more fluid, how much more relaxed, how much more easeful it feels for you and for your prospect as well. Let's talk about the second mistake then. So the second mistake that I often see being made on discovery calls is not giving a deadline. So more than likely, if you've had discovery calls before, you've experienced that response or that sort of wrap up summary from the prospect that says something like, I'd love to do this together. In fact, often you even get this when someone is in and they want to do it and they say, I'm just going to sit on it for a couple of days and come back to you. Now, there are two things that your prospect needs in order to support them to make a decision. And those two things that are going to help them to make a decision and to get off the fence and stop thinking and overthinking about this process, which we do as humans, we all do it. Two things. The first is urgency and the other is scarcity. This is what makes an effective sales conversation. So when it comes to urgency and scarcity, I'll give you some examples. So let's talk about urgency firstly. So creating urgency is about giving somebody a deadline. A deadline is going to be presented in a way that sounds something like this. So great, thanks Caroline. I'd love for you to let me know, if possible, by this coming Friday. And the reason that would be helpful for me, and I'm happy for you to think about it and reflect on it, and that's perfectly normal, but I'd love for you to let me know on Friday just so that I can plan out my capacity for new clients for the coming months and just see where I am in terms of availability for new clients after Friday. So if that's okay with you, do you think you'd be able to let me know by Friday? Now, I would suggest that a window of 1 to 2 days is enough. In fact, if they say, actually, I need a little bit longer, then you would agree on a new deadline. So it might be Monday if they say, actually, I'm not going to see my partner until the weekend. I'd love to talk to him or her about this. Could I let you know Monday? Fine, no problem. I'm going to put a note in my diary and I'll drop you a note on Monday. But letting me know by Monday is really helpful because, like I said, I only see a limited number of clients and my capacity is capped. So I'd love to be able to either firm this up or know that there are opportunities for other clients because I have, other calls booked in. Okay, so that's an example of urgency. Let's talk about scarcity. So for most of you, you should or could have a cap on the number of clients that you work with. Most people, when they're starting, don't, because they don't believe that it's possible to even reach capacity. So they make the mistake of thinking, well, I'm not there yet, so I don't need to cap it. But the reality is you do. You will have a cap on the number of clients that you want to and can feasibly work with. So you need to decide on what that number is. Once you have decided on that number, you can start to share it on your discovery calls as you conclude. So again, if someone's thinking about, reflecting on or taking some time to make their decision, you want to give them a deadline to create that urgency, but you also want to create a sense of scarcity because it is true in the context of what I've just explained that you do have a cap. It is true and authentic for you to say something like, just so you know, Caroline, just to give you the heads up, I only work with a limited number of clients at any one time. And right now I have a limited availability. So if you're happy to, I'd love for you to let me know by Friday because I don't want you to miss out on one of those places for us to work together. So there is a little bit of a deadline attached to this. It's not to add pressure to you. It's just so that I can run my business and know my capacity for new clients, to be fair to, other individuals that are reaching out to me every day. Okay. And of course, Caroline or the prospect, Billy, Bob, John is going to respect that. And they are then more likely to see that there is an impetus to make a decision. And that is very different to, in the context of those common mistakes, to saying, sure thing, let me know, no rush, you come back to me when you're ready. That is not an effective way to run your business. So even if you feel like you have all the space in the world and you have all the capacity in the world, treat your business as if it were a successful business. And a successful wellness expert does not have unlimited capacity. They do have a cap on their ability to serve clients. And so I want you to adopt that mindset too. And in doing so, you give your prospect the ability to make a faster decision for themselves. And faster decision making is not about adding pressure. It's about helping someone to see that the more they overthink this, the more likely it is that their brain is going to talk them out of it for lots and lots of reasons. And there's a fantastic book by Mel Robbins called The 5-Second Rule. And she talks about, how we talk ourselves out of taking action on the things that we know that we need and want, because our brain plays tricks on us. Our brain, brings us back to feelings of self-doubt or uncertainty, or should I or shouldn't I, or will this really work or won't it? And your job is to help your prospect through that doubt and to help them to see that nobody likes being a fence sitter. And you might even say something like that. Look, really happy for you to think about it, but let's be honest, nobody wants to feel like they're sitting on the fence. It's an uncomfortable place. Am I in or am I out? So I'd love to help you to make a fast decision. So if it suits you, I'd love to put a deadline on this. Do you think you could let me know by X date? And posing it as a question gets buy-in from the prospect. And then adding that sort of scarcity element of letting them know very politely and professionally that you do have a capacity limit for new clients and that you are close to reaching that capacity. And you just want to give them the heads up so that they know that taking action quickly is going to be helpful for both you and for them. Hopefully that makes sense. And again, is something that you can start to play with and put into action next time you have a call with a prospect. Let's talk about the third common mistake. Is probably maybe not the right way to frame it, but it is something that I see as a hurdle that a lot of wellness experts face. And that is this one, and it won't apply to everybody, but it does come up a lot. And that is the old, I need to ask my partner, can I come back to you response or objection at the end of a call. Now, a discovery call is an opportunity for you to field all of the concerns or doubts or questions that a prospect may have about working with you. One of the common, not objections, but rationales for somebody to hang up the phone and need more time to consider their next best step and whether it's right for them to work with you is talking to a partner. Now, I love this and I respect this because, most couples will make financial decisions together or at least reflect with one another on whether it's the right next step. And so it's a very fair request of you to be asked, could I have some extra time to consider this and to reflect on it with my partner? But here's how you play a role in coaching that individual to make the best decision for themselves, because ultimately the client relationship is between you and that individual, not their partner. The partner will not be the person on the calls with you doing the work, transforming their lives. It will be you and the client. So your job is to coach somebody through that decision-making process for themselves so that they can have the most effective conversation possible with their partner. So let's just use the stereotypical, scenario where it's a husband and wife conversation, okay? Just for the sake of this example and to bring this to life a little bit for you. Let's say you're speaking with a woman about a weight loss transformation journey and working with her to go on that journey. And she says to you, I'd like to talk to my husband about this, okay? Bearing in mind, it could be, partner, friend, mum, relative, whatever. In this instance, it's a woman wanting to speak to her husband about the decision. The psychology of any relationship is this. A partner always wants the best for their partner. Okay, which is typically true. Not always, but let's say that in the majority of cases, in a healthy, loving, functional relationship, a partner wants the best for their partner. So a husband wants the best for his wife. If your prospect is not certain or sure in her own mind that this is the right next step for her, then the conversation with her husband will probably sound something like this. Hubby, I'm thinking about working with this nutritionist or this practitioner, and I'm just not sure whether it's the right next step for me. What do you think? I'm just not sure about the investment. I'm just not sure whether it's the right thing for me to do. I'm feeling a little bit unsure about whether I should invest in myself. We've got this going on. We've got this holiday booked. What do you think? And framing a conversation with a partner like that is very different to if you could help your prospect to frame the conversation in this way. Hubby, I'm thinking about working with a nutritionist to transform my relationship with food so that I can wake up in the morning and, after years of struggling with this, as you know, look in the mirror and really love what I see. I want to feel energized and I want to feel da-da-da. And I think that this is the right person to help me. I feel really good about the conversation that we had. She answered all of my questions. I'm really confident that this is the right investment for me. And although I feel a little bit nervous about it, because I know we've got all these other things on the go, I really want to do this and I'd love your support. What do you think? See how different that framing is. And you can help your prospect to see how important it is to have the second conversation with their partner by explaining the dynamics of how their partner wants to support them. So this is how I would explain it to a prospect on a call. I would say something like, Caroline, I know that you want to discuss this with your partner, and I think that's a great idea. What I'd love for you to just bear in mind is that your husband wants the best for you, because I have no doubt that he loves you and wants to support you. So if you go to him and you let him know that this is the right decision for you, and you present this in a way where you're confident that this is the right next step for you that's going to finally set you free from XYZ, then he's going to want to support you. If you go to him and you say, I'm not sure, what do you think? This, that, and the other has come up and we've got all these other costs and, what do you think I should do? He's going to sense your indecision and your uncertainty, and he's going to back that. And he's going to say something like, look, I can tell that you're not sure about this. I don't think it's a good idea right now. Why don't we wait and see? So there's a difference. So I would love for you to feel really confident that this is the right next step for you. So with that in mind, are there any other questions that you have for me that will help you to have the most empowered conversation possible with your husband later on today? Can you see how once you have presented that supportive coaching, thinking to your prospect, they are going to have a very different conversation with their partner than the one that they may have otherwise had. And it's your job to help them with that. So if you're getting that as a common objection, what's actually happening is your prospect is telling you that they're not sure yet and they want to go and get certainty from their partner. But their partner isn't the right person to give them certainty. You are, because you're the one who's going to provide them with the transformation. So letting them know that this is the opportunity for them to ask any questions and to get absolutely sure that this feels right. Are there any doubts that they have? Are there any questions they have about it, how it works? Are there any hesitations that they have in their mind about whether this is the right fit for them? Now is the time to ask you rather, so that that conversation with their partner can be a really effective and empowered one. And again, like I said, it's your job to help them to see that. It's your job to help them to see the difference between those two different styles of conversation with a partner. So again, this is something that you could reflect on, maybe listen back to this, maybe practice how you would script that bit of conversation with a prospect and see how you get on with it next time. Your goal is to answer all of their questions so that they don't leave that call with any doubt or uncertainty or unanswered questions, and so that that conversation with a partner is the most powerful, most efficient, and that it's not about asking for permission, it's about asking for support on a decision that they feel that they have already made for themselves. So put it to test. Let me know how it goes for you. I'd love to hear your feedback. And we'll talk more about ways in which you can enhance and improve your sales conversations in future episodes. But for now, 3 tips to help you to avoid some of the common mistakes that are made or to overcome some of the hurdles or challenges you may already be facing on your discovery calls. Put them into action. Let me know how it goes, and I'll look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Take care.